Fighting back against racism starts with you. It is important to first understand the privilege that you have and to learn how to take action and use your power to benefit others.
So that's the message behind a new book, From Ally to Accomplice, How to Lead as a Fierce Antiracist. It's written by Seena Hodges, the founder and CEO of Anti-Racist Training Coach, and you're also a consultant. You're known as the Woke Coach.
Yes.
Seena, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
How did you even get started with this?
You know, I started the Woke Coach back in 2018, but my career in working in what's now called the DEI space I look young, but I'm a little older than I look. It goes back about 20 years.
Yeah.
My first job out of college was working at the Urban League affiliate in South Carolina, trying to get the Confederate flag down off the State House dome. So it's, you know, it's a part of my DNA and who I am.
And then you made your way up to Minnesota.
I made my way to Minnesota.
Started the Woke Coach in 2017?
2018.
Okay, tell us about the Woke Coach and the kind of work that you do, and tell us why you chose the word woke.
Oh, okay. So the work that we do really is we try to provide transformation. We actually want to take our clients and move them from one place to another place. So that's where From Ally to Accomplice comes in, right? It's about this notion of self-aware. How can you be more self-aware? And how can your own self-awareness in turn lead to creating more equitable and inclusive environments for other people? You know, I didn't choose to name my company the Woke Coach. It literally came to me in a dream. I can't make that up. And I never remember my dreams. But I woke up and I remembered the Woke Coach. And in my dream, I was wearing bright blazers and high heel shoes. And I don't know, we were all happy and we were doing great work. So that's essentially what happened. But when I think about what the word woke means, because I know that it has kind of set off a political firestorm, if you will, for us, the definition of woke is really super simple. What we know is that each of us is just the sum of our lived experiences. That's who we are. And none of us has the quintessential lived experience. So because of that, we have to awaken to the experiences of other people. That's what it means to be woke. What it means to be woke is to be plugged in and understand how power and how systems and how things like privilege actually operate on a day-to-day basis. How some people are pushed to the margins and some people are allowed to, you know, move through with, you know, unscathed, essentially.
I'm curious because I want to talk about the title of your book, From Ally to Accomplice.
Yeah.
You built your book on the premise that we should aspire to become more than allies. Why is being an ally not enough?
Yeah, you know, when I think about the word ally, back when Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was alive, he talked about white allies and what folks needed to do. And you know, since the 60s, I will acknowledge that we've made great progress, but we still have a long way to go. So I feel like sometimes the language of being an ally is a little insufficient for where we should aspire to be, right? I think it allows us a sense of comfort. An ally is a person who, you know, if you end up as an ally, I'm not saying that's a bad place. I'm saying you could push farther. But an ally is someone who's really well-intentioned. They want the best. If you are someone who is historically underrepresented and you tell them exactly what to do, they will do it. But an accomplice pushes past that. An accomplice is someone that, say hypothetically, you're running a marathon. The accomplice is the person that is making sure that you have your water, they're toweling you off, they might see a branch in the front and they get that out of the way for you, right? So it's an active use of your power and your privilege for the benefit of others.
Right, I've also heard the term ally being used as a verb. That if you're going to be an ally, this is something, or an accomplice even, this is the work that you need to do every day.
Absolutely.
Not just when you feel like you have good intentions, but really take actions and do those every day. And which leads me into, you know, a lot of this work, this anti-racism work, does and should fall on white people.
Yeah.
How can they get involved?
Yeah, you know what I tell white folks all the time is that curiosity is the seat of our learning, right? What are the things that you're curious about? If I go into your phone right now and look at like the last 10 things that you've asked Siri, you've probably asked something like, how many feet are in a mile? How many, you know, we are a curious society. We ask all these questions. And so if we're curious about a thing, we'll learn about a thing. And the reality is that the information is readily available, right? Google is really your friend. And oftentimes when you're looking up information, you know, what are you reading? What are you listening to? Who are you engaging with? Like, how are you changing your day-to-day patterns and practices? And honestly, when you encounter information, if you're researching, you'll find information that's been created by the people who are most grossly impacted by the issue. Right? And that's the information that you should be seeking out.
And you shouldn't be just relying on your friends of color. Oh, answer this for me.
Right.
No, you do the work.
Absolutely.
You go figure out what you need to do.
And here's the deal. You get to ask questions, right? But you don't get to ask questions until you've done a sufficient amount of research. right?
Yeah.
Once you've done some research and because the question is not you asking about someone's person, the question is then, I read this article and I listened to this podcast and I heard this very interesting thing and I have some questions about it, right? So then you're talking about something to deepen your knowledge based on something that you've sought out, and you're not simply relying on someone to help you have that information.
So you started the Woke Coach in 2018.
Yes.
What changes, because now we're in 2023.
Yes.
What changes have you seen since then? Or have you seen any changes since then?
So I will say, I'm always going to be honest that I believe that we've made some progress. I believe that we've passed some important legislation. And I believe that in 2020, people's hearts and minds were in the right place. We made a lot of commitments.
Okay, what about now?
Well, I was going to say, I think we've fallen back on those commitments that we've made to people. There are a lot of articles that are talking about, some of these big corporations and some of the pledges that they made to the African American community in particular. And we haven't received those things. We haven't done that work. And I think, for some people, I hear people divesting from the work already. They're saying, well, it's been 3 years and we had some training and we did some things and we hired the DEI person, so we're better off. And what I want to say to folks who feel like it's time to divest right now is that if you divest right now, I know you're going to set your company back at least a decade.
A decade?
At least, right? Because we're trying to repair and kind of come around from centuries of oppression and inequity. And for folks who don't understand that inequity is still taking place right now, that's the place that we are.
Yeah. This isn't the time to set the brakes. This is time to actually put the pedal to the metal at this point.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us more about the book?
Ooh.
Yeah.
So I lit up, didn't I?
Yeah.
So, when I talk to clients about our work, the number one word that they use to describe our work is transformational. And I think that's really key. And when I thought about how we could scale the business, so to speak, I can't 10x myself. I could, we have other coaches who work in the business, but when I thought about how to make the greatest impact, it was take what we teach, put it in a book so that everybody can have access to it, right? And so I wanted to make sure that people, no matter where they lived, could have access to the teachings and the education that we provide, and really start to try to create these equitable and inclusive cultures by starting with self-awareness. So there's anecdotes from some companies, some are named, some are not named. There are coaching prompts in the book. We really talk about that notion of self-awareness, and we really get deep into the definitions of ally and accomplice and what those actions actually look like. And one, how you are an ally or an accomplice in your real life, but also just how you're an accomplice at work as well.
Look, let's be honest, these are tough conversations to have. I mean, these are very complex, very deep issues, but we are just now starting to have more of these conversations, and this dialogue has to continue in order for us to move together, in order for us to move forward together, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's what it's all about.
Absolutely. It is, one of the things that's really true is that racism hurts everybody. And until we really understand that it does hurt everybody, it takes away our humanity, it fosters inequity, it doesn't help us thrive, right? And so once we realize that it hurts everybody, and white folks need to understand that, people of color, we do understand that. And if you understand that it does hurt everybody, then it means that we have to have a collective solution for how we make sure that we're not hurting each other.
Right, and what I love about your work, if you follow Cena on Instagram, you know that she is everywhere, all over the place. But and I'm appreciative that you wrote this book because you give people concrete examples of the work that they can do. Because I think there's a lot of people out there, especially white people, that say, well, what can I do?
Absolutely.
Right,
Absolutely.
and you are saying, hey, look, here's what you can do. Start with this book. Talk to the woke coach. Just figure out what's going on.
Absolutely. It's also participating in self-awareness. And sometimes people don't want to hold up the mirror and look at themselves.
That's hard to do.
That's really hard to do. It's hard for everybody to do, right? But it's especially hard to do when someone tells you that you're deficient in a way, and you haven't expected or experienced yourself being deficient, right? But people are telling you that you're missing a piece, right? And so that's a difficult thing to do. And the way that we do the work, quite honestly, is that we infuse joy. It doesn't mean that because we're talking about an issue that can be that's difficult, that it has to be an oppressive conversation where you're like, you are wrong and this is this. That's not the way we work. Any of our clients will tell you that we create environments where people can be the whole of who they are. there's curiosity, there's a lot that goes on in those spaces.
Do you think that's part of the issue, that people don't necessarily want to hold up that mirror, but there's also a fear of that conversation, and it's going to be the aggressor, as you just mentioned, you're doing this wrong. Absolutely. There's a way that, is that part of the problem too?
I think, fear keeps us from being our best selves on any given day. Yeah. If we feel like we'll be absolutely successful at something, we'll jump to it, right? But if we feel like, oh, I'm going to fail, or I don't know this, or, you don't want me working at NASA. I don't know what they do. You know what I mean? I don't know what they do at NASA, and I would probably screw it all up, right? And so that's that innate fear that we have about doing things that are challenging to us, especially when we feel like, for however long we've been on this planet, that we've been good people.
Right.
Right?
So book comes out in September.
Book comes out in September.
You can pre-order now?
Yes, pre-order now. Please, please, please. Yes.
Right. Okay. And then can you find it on Amazon? Where can you find it?
So we're selling it at thewokecoach.com. So www.thewokecoach.com.
Okay.
Yep. It's right on the website.
Seena, thank you so much for the wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
And of course, if you want more information, you can go to our website. We'll have a link to thewokecoach.com. Of course, you can pre-order that new book.